Episode 3 of the plan. Some of the causes of for the breakdown in the economy. Hello and welcome to this next episode, where I will give you a little insight and I guess you could say something to think about relating to a few of the causes that led us to where we are today. So how did this begin, you may ask and wonder? Well, let me say they derive from many areas, and these would relate to the following listings. The favoritism for cheap imported goods is one of the contenders to this problem. What used to be the support and pride for local manufactured goods has now been swept to the side for cheaper imported goods. As favoritism and the preference for imported goods as they're marketed cheaper due to cheaper production overseas than any locally made products have made it difficult for local manufacturers to compete and remain in business due to this trend. This has in the end caused job losses and in some cases the eventual closure of factories and many businesses. Modernisation is another one of these that have some aspect added to this problem. Now, I'm not saying that modernisation of working systems and methods is a bad thing, and it is good to keep up to date. However, there are some areas that modernisation has in the end created more job losses. Some of these losses can be resolved from positions being scrapped, as these chores have been taken over and replaced with the more efficient machinery and or computer systems. When some of these positions have been taken over by machines or a process is deemed no longer required, it can also be referred to as a restructuring of a business, and therefore can be easily confused as a restructuring. But I'll get into that in a moment. Let me give you something to think about. If we look back towards the time prior to the 70s, a period that stretched from around the 1920s to 1970s, though that's a broad scope to reflect, but that's generally the period when much of the world was living and working better. Confidence was high, local production was supported, jobs could be filled very easily even just from walking off the street. On-the-job training was vital to these many industries, and there was always plenty of room for more workers. Today, a big percentage of those jobs have been taken over through what is referred to as progress by employing machines and computers and many systems. True that in many cases this really is good, but it does mean there are fewer jobs in the world available if someone cannot afford to attend a course at a university or a TAFE college, as an example. Today, since today's employers in a variety of fields now request for high specifics for a job seeker that include industry experience and hold a high level of qualifications, going through in many cases an expensive course. No wonder there are many people out there that find it hard to find a job, a prospective employer willing to hold an interview and who is willing to give the applicant a fair go. I may get into more about this in another segment, but this is another of the reasons. A restructuring of a business can help to improve the working systems, but can also in some instances add to this problem if it relates to job losses, and this could also result if a company CEO or manager is more greedy for pay rise than supporting their staff. Company buy-offs and takeovers can also contribute to this problem, and this can be fueled by a CEO or manager of the buying company, more so if they are greedy for a pay rise and have no consideration for the workers. In the above situation, normally if a company is bought out and taken over, in many cases they would then be closed down. The buying company is not interested in keeping it, like crushing a bug. They buy out their opposition, then shut them down. More money for the CEO and company managers, but no consideration for the prior workers. Why do they have to do this? Why can't there be a situation or a business model that if they don't like the opposition, then instead of closing the bought company, that they instead merge the business, retrain the prior staff and incorporate them to manufacture and service the goods of the new company. Workers won't be too concerned on which brand or make they work for, as long as they still have a job. That is the most important thing. Another example I should add to the restructuring, as they call it, is when a company or service who is also greedy for a pay rise and don't care much for their workers may either cut down a department or shift the department overseas, where cheaper workers from an outsourcing company could do the work for a cheaper price, which can mean that, and has actually been happening only just recently, such as the layoffs of local workers in the hundreds. In one instance, I won't mention who, but one company decided to, without prior warning, other than just a couple of hours, emailed all their staff in one department and telling them all to pack up their desks and go home, since the positions had been moved offshore, and no consideration at all is given to these workers. Just CEO and shareholder greed in these cases, and this can happen in companies not doing this to save themselves, but by ones that do make a big level of constant profit, so it's greed. But one thing about this is that it's not the workers overseas to get angry at, since they are paid so much less than comparable people elsewhere and struggle more in those countries since they're not treated fairly in those jobs. When some of these companies overseas have actually come from Western countries, like America in some cases, running in these lower income countries because they can pay workers less while gaining huge profits from the customer companies they deal with. My example is illustrated above. As an example, can relate to call centers, but this can also affect certain other fields as well, depending on the CEO's level of profit greed. Like I said above, it's not the workers of these call centers to get angry at, since these people are just trying to hold any job to survive, but the local CEOs of mostly countries of the Western world concerned with money greed versus the plain workers. Now, I've only mentioned a few here. There are a few other reasons, but some of these may add to monetization, such as if a business or service has been superseded and is no longer seen as viable for today's economy and the needs of today to remain in business. Well, that's my third episode of the plan. Hope I may have helped to shed some light to energize some thinking after giving some thoughts in order to recognize the issues and how it may have been caused, and possibly on ways that it could be solved.